When you buy your first rental, managing it just makes sense. You want to save money, you want to learn the business, you want to understand your tenant, your property, and where every dollar is going. And I actually think there is value in that. Some landlords are excellent self-managers. They have the systems, they understand the laws, they have reliable vendors, they screen tenants properly, and they genuinely don't mind handling the day-to-day responsibilities. At some point, you have to ask yourself a very important question. Are you still managing your rental property because it makes financial sense? Or are you managing it because you haven't stopped long enough to calculate what it's actually costing you? Because there is a point where saving a property management fee starts costing you more money than hiring a property manager. Today, I'm going to give you 5 signs that you've reached that point, and stay until the end because the 5th one is the reason I think many successful real estate investors eventually stop managing their properties. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Every week, I share practical landlord tips, Illinois landlord updates, tenant screening strategies, and real-world lessons from property management. I'm Gabi Witas, owner of NexGen Real Estate and Property Management, helping landlords in Chicagoland navigate the scene. And after years of working with rental property owners, I can tell you that there is no magical number of properties where suddenly you need a property manager. I've met landlords who can successfully manage 10 properties, and I've met landlords who are completely overwhelmed by one. The decision isn't just about how many properties you own. It's about your time, your knowledge, your systems, your stress level, and most importantly, how well your investment is actually performing. So let's talk about the 5 signs it may be time to stop being a DIY landlord and consider professional property management. Number 1, tenant screening has become something you rush. This is the first one because, in my opinion, tenant placement is one of the most important parts of owning rental property. If you place the right tenant, property management becomes much easier. If you place the wrong tenant, almost everything becomes harder. Rent collection, maintenance, lease enforcement, communication, turnover, and potentially eviction. The problem is that screening tenants properly takes time. You need to review the application, verify income, review pay stubs, look at year-to-date earnings, consider the applicant's overall financial picture, review credit, verify landlord references, look for inconsistencies, make sure your screening criteria are being applied consistently, and follow fair housing laws throughout the entire process. That's a lot more than running a credit report and asking, when can you move in? But when landlords become busy, this is one of the first places they start cutting corners. The property has been vacant for 3 weeks. The mortgage is due. Utilities are still being paid. Someone finally applies. They seem nice. They have the security deposit. And suddenly, the landlords start making exceptions. I'll verify the employer later. The previous landlord said they were fine. The income is close enough. They explain the credit issues. That's how expensive mistakes happen. You should never be too busy to properly screen the person who is about to receive possession of an asset worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you're serious about protecting your investments, start with a checklist. It's free, it's the same system I use, and it will save you from making a very expensive mistake. Link is in the description. The easiest tenant problem to solve is still the tenant you never placed. And if you no longer have the time, knowledge, or patience to properly screen every applicant, that's the sign you may need help. Back to number 2. You're constantly reacting instead of managing. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you proactively checked on your rental property? Not because something broke, not because the tenant complained, not because the lease was expiring. When was the last time you looked at the property as an investment and asked, is the rent still competitive? Is the lease renewal coming up? Are there preventative maintenance items we should address? Are there small repairs that could become expensive? Is the tenant following the lease? Do we have updated insurance information? Is our documentation complete? Many DIY landlords don't manage their properties. They react to them. The tenant calls, they respond. Something breaks, they fix it. Rent is late, they follow up. The lease expires, they suddenly realize they should have handled renewal 2 months ago. That's not really management. That's putting out fires. And when you constantly operate in reaction mode, things get missed. Small maintenance issues become large expenses. Lease renewals are handled too late. Rent stays below market rate because nobody reviewed it. Insurance documents expire. Inspections don't happen. Documentations become incomplete. Professional property management should be boring. There should be systems. There should be recurring processes. There should be reminders. There should be documentation. The goal isn't to consistently have emergencies and become really good at solving them. The goal is to prevent as many emergencies as possible. If every interaction with your rental property feels urgent, that's another sign that your current property management system isn't working. Number 3, you don't fully understand the legal environment you're operating in. This is a big one for Chicagoland landlords. Owning the property does not mean you can manage it however you want. You have federal laws, Illinois laws, county regulations, municipal ordinances, fair housing requirements, security deposit rules, notice requirements, eviction processes, and depending on where your property is located, their requirements can change. Managing a rental in Chicago is not necessarily the same as managing it in Schaumburg, Naperville, or another municipality. And I didn't know is not a legal strategy. I see landlords make mistakes because they're trying to do the right thing, but they don't understand the rules. They ask the wrong questions during screening. They handle an emotional support animal request incorrectly. They use the wrong notice. They don't understand local security deposit requirements. They make a verbal agreement that creates problems later, or they wait too long to address non-payment because they don't understand the eviction process. Illinois uses a judicial eviction process. You cannot simply change the locks. You cannot shut off the utilities. You cannot remove the tenant's belongings because they've stopped paying rent. You have to follow a legal process. And legality is key because you can be completely right about the tenant violating the lease and still create a bigger problem for yourself if you handle the situation incorrectly. There is nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. Let me verify that. In fact, I think that's one of the smartest things a landlord or property manager can say. The problem is when you don't know what you don't know. If you're consistently searching the internet at midnight trying to figure out whether you can charge a fee, deny an applicant, send a notice, enter the property, or handle a tenant complaint, you need to ask whether self-management is still the best decision for you. Number 4, your rental property is taking too much of your time. This is probably the easiest sign to recognize. Your rental property is taking over your life. The calls, the emails, the maintenance, the showings, the applications, the vendors, the rent collection, the lease renewals, the notices, the bookkeeping, the inspections, the documentations. One rental property may not seem like much, but one difficult tenant can consume more than 5 good tenants. One major maintenance problem can take over your entire week. One vacancy can mean dozens of inquiries, showings, follow-ups, applications, and screening decisions. And this is where I want landlords to calculate the real cost of self-management. Let's say you spend 10 hours per month managing your properties. What is your time worth? $25 an hour? $50? $100? $200? If you're a business owner, attorney, doctor, salesperson, executive, or entrepreneur, what could you earn by spending those 10 hours in your actual business? And even if you aren't working during those hours, what is your personal time worth? Time with your family, weekends, vacations, evenings, peace of mind. Landlords often look at a management fee as an expense without putting any financial value on their own time. That's not a complete calculation. And I'm not saying every landlord should hire a property manager. If you enjoy managing your properties and you're good at it, continue. But if you resent every tenant call, if you delay maintenance because you're too busy, if you're responding to messages while you're on vacation, if your spouse is tired of hearing about your rental property, at some point you need to ask, do I own an investment or did I buy myself another job? And number 5, your portfolio cannot grow without you working more. This is the biggest one. And I think this is where investors need to be very clear about what they're actually trying to build. Let's say you own one rental property. You manage it yourself. Fine. Then you buy a second one, then a third and the fourth. And every time you buy another property, you create more work for yourself. More tenants, more maintenance, more leases, more communication, more accounting, more risk. At some point, growth becomes impossible without increasing your workload. And that's not a scalable investment portfolio. That's a job that gets harder every time you become more successful. The goal of investing in real estate should be to build assets, not to become the lowest paid employee in your own real estate company. And this is where the property management fee conversation changes. Instead of asking how much will a property manager cost me, ask what would I do if I got this time back? Could you find another property? Could you grow your business? Could you improve your current portfolio? Should you spend more time with your family? Could you actually enjoy the income your investments are creating? The investors who scale successfully usually learn how to delegate. They don't personally handle every repair. They don't personally answer every tenant call. They don't personally show every property. They build systems and teams that allow the portfolio to perform without requiring their constant involvement. And that's the biggest sign that it may be time to make the switch. When you become the bottleneck in your own portfolio. So when should you actually hire a property manager? There isn't one answer. You don't automatically need professional management because you own 5 properties. And you don't automatically need to self-manage because you only own 1. Ask yourself 5 questions. Am I screening tenants thoroughly, consistently, and legally? Am I proactively managing the properties, or am I consistently reacting? Do I understand the federal, state, county, and local laws that apply to my rental? Is self-management taking time away from more valuable parts of my life or business? And can my portfolio continue growing without requiring more and more of my personal time? If you answered no to several of these questions, it may be time to consider making the switch. The biggest mistake is waiting until there's a crisis. This is something I see constantly. Landlords don't look for professional help when things are going well. They call when they're exhausted. The tenant hasn't paid, the property is damaged, there are maintenance issues, the documentation is incomplete, the lease has problems, and now they want someone to fix everything. Property management works best when it is proactive, not when someone is brought in after the property is already in crisis. If you know you no longer have the time to manage properly, don't wait for a $15,000 mistake to prove it. If you know you don't understand the legal requirements, don't wait until there's a complaint. If you know you want to grow a portfolio, don't wait until you're completely overwhelmed to build an infrastructure. Make a decision based on where you're going, not just where you are today. Being a DIY landlord is not a bad thing. For many property owners, it's exactly where they should start. You learn the business, you understand the tenants, you learn maintenance, you learn leasing, you learn how your investment actually operates. But there comes a point where going everywhere yourself stops saving money. Tenant screening gets rushed. You start reacting instead of managing. The legal requirements become more than you comfortably keep up with. The property takes too much of your time. And eventually your portfolio cannot grow without you working more. That's when you have to ask yourself the real question. Is managing my own property still helping me reach my portfolio? My goals? Because the goal of owning property isn't to create more work for yourself. The goal is to build wealth. Create income, protect your investment, and eventually create more freedom. If you found this video helpful, make sure you subscribe to this channel. And if you're in Chicagoland area and you're thinking about making the switch from self-management to professional property management, my team at NexGen Real Estate and Property Management is here to help. Thanks for watching, and as always, where's your future?